Hey, welcome to Reanimated, guys. This is episode 316. Today, it's me, Stuart, in California. We also have H.A. Conrad coming at us from Brooklyn. Good day, H.A.
Good day.
Hi. And from the Great North, the Kyle, special guest Kyle is here. Special guest Kyle is here to help us process the trauma of this show we're about to start reviewing. Hi, Kyle.
I liked the good day. Can I do a good day too? Good day.
Good day, sir. We do pride ourselves on propriety here. So we're going to be getting into All of Us Are Dead, a new show from Netflix, which we keep talking to one another about how we didn't know. We thought it was a movie based on the trailer when we first saw it. Then we discovered that it was a show. And then as Kyle and I were talking before we started recording today, holy crap, it's 12 episodes and each of them are an hour long. This is a project, not just for us, but for the showrunners. My God.
I think we're going to maybe have to do 2 episodes at a time after this.
We might.
I think. And then I have some commentary, which my commentary on having a show like this for this many episodes is that I feel like it's going to get a little repetitive, but I could be wrong.
We'll 12 like this is all 3 of the extended cut Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have a little bit of news to get through before we can start talking about this show. I'll go ahead and launch with the first one, which was an announcement for a new comedic series starring zombies, but coming from Julie Plec and Kevin Williamson. I believe Kevin Williamson has some Scream heritage. He had something to do with that film. And this is, I believe, the elevator pitch is, it's kind of like, what I read from the Deadline article was, it kind of reads to me like Purge meets Walking Dead, because it's a suburban family preparing for this day that happens every year when the undead rise and attack the living.
Yeah, and these are the folks that brought us Vampire Diaries, so I am not necessarily fully convinced that this will be excellent, but maybe worth checking out to see what's what when we decide, after we get through our 12 episodes of this particular series.
There's a lot of CW going on in this show.
But
and it's called Dead Day. I don't know if I said that, but yeah, so Dead Day, I guess I'm not sure when we can expect it. I think it's still in fairly early announcement phase. But it could be interesting. Definitely jury's still out.
This news article has very kind of generic quotes from everybody involved. Like, Dead Day combines an exciting high concept premise with relatable characters and real emotions, said Lisa Katz, president of scripted content for NBC Universal. Like, this, it's just there's nothing specific there whatsoever. She probably gave that same quote about 6 different shows that day.
Yeah, that does not do much for me.
It actually felt like a pitch, like that particular description. It was just like, is this what you used for your pitch and getting this off the ground? I don't know.
An emotional, unexpected, and totally bingeable. Also, very nondescript. Okay. Well, that's Dead Day. Let's keep an eye on it. I don't particularly have super high expectations. Now, HA, what I'm curious is, did you see this next one about Riyadh in your
I did, and I saw this and I was going to put this in, but you beat me to it. And I have a lot of questions. This is, it feels like it's not sustainable. It is and it seems like things that may not necessarily mix together, like, eating and gore.
Saudis and gore, frankly. For me.
Right. The whole thing feels a little. And actually, one of the best things about this particular article was the quotes from some of the people attending.
Yes.
I couldn't eat a thing, or I love it. And it just sort of spliced between the weird theme of this restaurant, which is basically a horror themed restaurant where people are dressed like horror actors, they're kind of dressed up, but there's also dishes that get served. I just don't know how you would sustain something like this, but good for that. Good on them for trying. And the fact that this is like something that's happening there is kind of strange, but you know, I guess we'll have to see what happens.
It's a really weird blend for me between like Rainforest Cafe or Planet Hollywood
Right.
and I don't know, yeah, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Like what I wouldn't expect either of those restaurants there either, and this is going off the deep end.
Right.
I-
I mean, I will say I could potentially see something like this in Tokyo, maybe, but maybe as like a pop-up or something. Like that's what it kind of feels like to me, not something that would be sustainable. I don't know. But you know,
There's two things that strike me here. The first is that the like headline picture in this article is of a woman sitting at a table with like just a totally cheesy Halloween, there's probably 50 of these on my block on Halloween
Mhm.
skeleton, and she looks so bored. Like she's,
Yeah,
she's like taking a picture.
she's like
and-
checking her phone.
yeah, she
It's
just not care about where she is at all. But this specific experience aside, I would be down for just a culture-wide reinvigoration of the theme restaurant. That very fond memory of the Rainforest Cafe and medieval times in Vegas when I was a kid, and then when I lived in New York, there was a restaurant in Manhattan somewhere called like Mars 2112, where you like entered through like a kind of a spaceship ride, and then it was like like a futuristic restaurant bar thing. And I just think it's awesome. Like restaurants are boring. Let's mix it up a little bit. Let's have some sort of theme like this. I'm all for that, regardless of the specifics of this particular place.
yeah. I recall Mars 2012, and it closed in 2012, and
Only 100 years shy.
only 100 years shy. And I don't know. I think that there's something like this in Times Square, like a weird thing where you take like an elevator up. But this stuff isn't my cup of tea, just in terms of I don't generally like to mix dining and, you know, themes, I guess. Medieval times feels a little different to me somehow because there's kind of like a show going on,
Are you
right?
really going to the medieval times for the food? Like
Well,
the
no,
turkey
but
leg and the
I
flagon
know,
of mead?
but to me, it's not necessarily about the dining there. It's more about the
That's what I
floor.
mean. Yeah, it's about the
But
jousting and the
I mean, there's jousting, but anyway, I don't know. This is maybe, I think the closest I ever got to this, there was like, and this is the only time I've ever been to Japan, and why I mentioned that I thought this might be a thing you could find in Tokyo. But a friend of ours was living there at the time, and he was like, "Oh, we should go to this restaurant. You're gonna love it." And it was like a gothic steakhouse kind of, and the waiters had like well, at least the one that we had their like eyeballs dyed, and they were all like very tricked out, and it was in like, I don't know if it was a former church or whatever, but it was like the closest to this kind of thing I think I've ever been in. The food was actually really good, shockingly. But that almost felt less of it was more of like set dressing versus like, and I guess the waiters, maybe it was a rule you had to have your eyeballs dyed. I don't know. And dressed like Robert Smith. They all looked like Robert Smith for the most part. But I don't know. We'll have to keep track of this.
I don't know.
We'll have to keep track of this restaurant in Riyadh to see. Like, I just want to know how, like, your day of getting ready. It's really horrible to be a waiter anyway, or a waitress, and then to have this added element as part of your getting ready. I mean, there could be a movie just based upon the wait staff here, in my opinion. So,
Also in New York, what's the diner where they sing at you?
oh, the Hollywood? No, no, no.
Moonstruck?
It's I don't know if it's still there actually.
Chicago,
That,
you just
that
have restaurants where people insult you, like Ed DeBevick's and the Wiener Circle.
that's just that's not a requirement of their job though. That's just like extracurricular, right?
Oh,
I think it might be a requirement. Wait, you
Okay.
talking about the singing or the insulting?
No, the singing. Yeah, there was one restaurant where like musical theater kids would go work because it was a requirement that you sing.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it's called.
it's the Stardust Diner, Ellen's
Ah,
Stardust Diner.
that one always struck me as just like, what if you just were tired that day and didn't feel like like belting out show tunes and just wanted to get through your shift.
Well, and if you think about it, in the times of COVID, probably not the best idea to have
Yeah,
people
very
belting out
much
show
so.
tunes in a small space.
Maybe they just have to hum quietly.
Yes, well, or like just cue cards. Imagine that I'm singing right now. But
We've
anyway.
replaced all of our singers with mimes, so enjoy the show. In video game news, I don't know if you remember, HA or Kyle, if you ever heard of this game. There's a Walking Dead game called Saints and Sinners. It's VR only. So I had kind of relegated it to the VR world, which has never really taken off to the extent that people thought it would. But this is the first Walking Dead IP video game that I've heard of getting a sequel, other than maybe mobile games, which are always more popular than they deserve. So Saints and Sinners is getting a sequel is the big news. And to me, that's just impressive because I haven't seen anything else good come out of this IP for video games. And a lot of the time when you take an existing IP like Marvel or Star Wars, those video games don't tend not to live up to the hype.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I talked about this when there was like a trailer out for whatever. I mean, it looks good, so people seem to be excited about it.
Yeah, and the demo that we looked at, I remember like you were like crushing skulls with your hands in VR, and so that seemed really engaging. But I wasn't sure, because I don't even know what the sales numbers are for like Oculus and the other VR headsets and which one this is on. But I can't imagine that they're moving like massive numbers.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see, but people seem to be excited about it, so I guess we'll have to see what
excited enough anyway. I mean, this is also, I don't know how much AMC has to do with rolling these things out, but they continue to push out Walking Dead TV shows regardless of the quality, so
right.
or the audience.
That is true. That is true. And speaking of other Walking Dead spinoffs, the next and last bit of news before we hop into our review of All of Us Are Dead, or the first episode anyway, there is a sort of spin-off graphic novel coming out in June. There's a trailer for it. It's called Clementine, and it's based upon the one of the Walking Dead video games, the Telltale game storyline. And the trailer is actually kind of cool to watch. The thing that I got a kick out of, which I did know that, like I had heard this before I saw the trailer, but there's like an Amish kid sidekick, which I just think is hilarious. So, and he looks great. He looks great. But
yeah, Amish kids could probably wield a scythe pretty well, good with their hands.
Yeah, so I am, I might check this out when it comes out. And this is by Tilly Walden. And she's done a few different graphic novels. And actually has kind of a cool background. Like as a kid, she was like a competitive figure skater, and so actually one of her graphic novels is about that. And actually she was inspired by Scott McCloud, took a workshop with him, and that's how she got into doing, like manga and all this other stuff.
So when there's just one name on the cover of a graphic novel, is this person the writer, or are they the artist, or how do you usually?
In this case, she is both. So she is the creator, writer, the penciler, and the inker. If somebody else was involved, they both of them would be on there.
Triple threat.
So she's everything. But yeah, so I'm gonna have to put this in my notes to check out when it actually comes out.
I mean, I've played a couple of those Telltale kind of point and click adventure games about The Walking Dead. I did not get to all of them, but the story was pretty robust, and Clementine was one of the more captivating characters, and you kind of got to see her grow up, I think, at least into tween years. During that show. When you first meet her, she's like a little kid, like 8. Which is kind of terrifying for the zombie apocalypse.
I know, and this is definitely a YA comic, and that it's supposed to be sort of continuing the storyline, I guess, after whatever the storyline was, her storyline in the game, wherever it ended. So, and oh, sorry, there was one more item that I missed. Sorry, go ahead, Stuart, because this is your
no,
deal.
it's really just me going ee, which is that Dying Light 2 comes out on February 4th, and I'm pretty excited to check that out. And if you don't recall, that is the game of zombies, parkour, night and day, and your choices have in Dying Light 2, your choices in the story will have are supposed to have knock-on effects in the environment. Like you choose to support one faction over another, and that faction's like ethos gets reflected in the landscape. Like if they are environmentalists, suddenly there's more green. If they are industrialists, the city is darker and smokier, I think, is kind of what I remember from the trailer that I saw a while back. But yeah, that's coming out soon. And environment aside, it does have fast zombies and nighttime scarier zombies. So I'm pretty excited about it.
All right. Well, I'm not, you'll have to tell us all about it, because I'm not this, as you know, and it's not because I don't like games. It's definitely, I like games probably too much. And if I get hooked, I will get hooked. And so, I have to leave it. I had to delete like Tetris from my phone because that's how bad it is.
That's pretty weak.
I know. And that's not even, one of these really involved games. So
also last night I did my first Wordle before going to bed.
I think it's boring personally. I think it's kind of lame, but
I'm super addicted to the Wordle.
Really? Come on.
It's exciting. It's super fun. But for traditional style video games, I play about one video game very slowly over the course of like 2 or 3 years. So, so I'm like slowly working my way through God of War, which came out in like 2018 or something like that.
It just got released on PC. Are you playing it on your PlayStation?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just got released on PC, so it's been in the news a lot lately.
So Kyle, do you but when you play, it's not like you can stop yourself from playing, right? Like you're not like, I need to stay up through the night and finish this, right?
No, it's more like I my wife doesn't want to watch what I want to watch that night, and she wants to watch her own show, and so instead I play a video game for an hour. Like that's like it's in tiny little dribs and drabs for me right now.
Yeah, well, I'm not capable of doing that. So better leave that off my roster.
It looks like, can I jump backwards just for a minute to Clementine? It looks like she is an amputee. Am I understanding this picture right?
Is she? I mean, there's a long, rich history of Walking Dead characters who are amputees. So
she has some sort of like skate looking thing on.
She does have a foot missing.
I guess I missed that, Kyle. So well done.
Maybe that was in the later games, but she certainly had both feet last time I saw her. Yeah.
But given that we now know that the main creator of this was a figure skater, I think it's kind of funny.
One of the things that I appreciate about TikTok, which is in many ways a garbage platform, but it does put you in contact with people who are kind of educating you about their life. So like there's like someone I follow who's a burn survivor who's chronicling her like recovery from really traumatic burns, and one of the people that I follow is an amputee who kind of like educates people about day-to-day life, as in her case she's a below the knee amputee. And it is actually extremely painful, not surprisingly, to be an amputee, and that part of your body is not supposed to directly support weight, so you get pain in your like amputation site, and skin infections from it being closed up all day, and she has all these special like silicone little wrappers and stuff that she has to put on her legs. So like The Walking Dead has never been big on like the day-to-day mechanics of how these people are like eating, showering, keeping themselves safe, not succumbing to just regular run-of-the-mill illnesses,
right.
But I'm just particularly you know, I'm just reeling a little bit at the idea of how this would work in this sort of environment.
Yeah, that's a great point. And honestly, Fear the Walking Dead kind of started to hit on this about a season ago when Garrett Dillahunt's character finally got a cavity. And you're
Yep.
just, and I was just, I had been saying like, this guy eats Werther's like they're, like he's chain smoking. And finally he got a cavity and like pulled his own tooth. But again, there was no like infection story. He could have just died from that. And I think we'd mentioned that when that storyline was on the show.
Yeah, just like clean water alone, you would just constantly have dysentery, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. Or like whatever. I don't know if you you all ever watched the show. It was like with Les Stroud, and he he did these, him and his wife, like early on in his career, would go off and they're like, we're gonna live off the land and whatever. And they were both ill for a really long amount of time. And they both apparently had is it Gardia?
Oh god.
Because they were drinking just from like, a fresh mountain stream and whatever. So I just think it would be not fun, but more interesting, I think, for some of these shows to touch upon that stuff. And dental care, certainly. I mean, that's a huge thing. That people could be succumb to, something that doesn't seem all that obvious. But I also have to note, before we get off of the Clementine thing, now that we're back at it again, apparently part of the story is that they're traveling to Vermont, which of course is near and dear to my heart. And they're gonna be like converting a ski resort into a like sanctuary.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. But anyway, shall we jump in?
Yeah. Let's kick this thing off. So all of us are dead. All 12 episodes of the first season. We will do our best here. Director, I believe, for the entire series is the same person, Lee Jae-gyu. Oh yeah, normal Korean show. Warnings up front. We can't pronounce any names, and I'm really sorry about that. And I actually watched this episode twice that we're going to talk about today. Once with the original Korean and subtitles, which is usually how I prefer, and then once just with the English dub, which actually I'm going to say, guys, it was pretty good quality. Unless you watched it that way too,
I just watched it with the English subtitles. So
I watched it that way just to see if it was going to be more or less intelligible, and I think just for the names it was a little easier to nail those down, because it's English then person's name. As opposed to when you're listening to the Korean, it's really hard to even pick names out of some of those sentences for the longer ones. Okay, so here we've got let me just talk about the first 4 members of the cast who I think they're on some of the posters. And by the end of this first episode, you have you kind of start to realize it's complicated with them. And so one of our leading men is named Cheong-san, named after the restaurant Cheong-san Chicken.
Yep.
And he is played by Yoon Chan-young. And then we've got Nam Onjo, his next door neighbor and his mega crush. And she is played by Park Ji-hoo. Choi Namra is class president, has like one line in this episode. I think they're going to have to build her up a little more. And she is played by Cho Yi-hyun. And then there's Lee Soo-hyuk, otherwise known as Bear Soo, and that's probably how I'm going to refer to him more often. And he is played by Park Solomon. And I've already seen some articles saying that he's the breakout star of this show.
Oh yeah, well, I think they were certainly propping him up to be that in any case.
He's tall, he's handsome.
Yep.
So yeah. So those I think are our main 4, but there are a lot of other characters. There's a ton of characters in this show. Some of them have already
I think
died.
I want to mention just talk about one of the main bullying characters.
Oh god.
And I also
gonna be like the mullet guy.
Yes, and
that guy was so evil. I hated that dude.
Gui Nam is the name of the mullet bully, and I also want to point out, I saw this whole thing that mullets are coming back, and I was just like, why
again?
Yeah, and
weren't they just in a minute ago?
Yeah, and the thing is that I feel like it was deliberate to give this guy a mullet to make him the bad guy.
Each bully has a kind of a distinctive look. You've got the leader bully, who is weirdly the shortest one of them. I don't really understand that.
He's really evil.
But he's spiky hair to me. That's in my head canon. And then there's Tracksuit, who was kind of like he's really tertiary. But yeah, Mullet might be the worst.
Yeah.
Mullet's the worst. And then there's like reluctant bully who's like doesn't really want to be there, but they keep sucking him in.
Yep.
Well,
And we can't, we have to, I mean, the girl bully who is a main piece of this story from the rooftop.
Is she?
Well, yeah, she's on there, and well, let's just say, I mean, she's. We can talk about this as we talk about the rooftop scene.
No, but I want to clarify this. Is she tracksuit pants? Is she first zombie girl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought she might be, but I couldn't. Okay,
Yeah,
we
which
can
is
keep
also-
talking about it.
Yeah, which is also why, dad, bio teacher guy, is not really all that plussed by the fact that she's like having some problems. So anyway, but
honestly, that rooftop scene, it's raining, she has an umbrella, like there aren't a lot of shots of her face, I thought, so it was kind of challenging.
But she does say something key and makes it like even worse. A scene, like the whole thing is horrible and tragic, and Jinsu is the character we're seeing bullied here, and he's a main part of the story, obviously. And it's horrific. There is a lot of hit over your head sort of symbolism on the roof. You've got the sort of cross, and that's like one of the main opening scenes. You see like the cross in the puddle and all of that, and
there's a swastika on a flag up there.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice that? It's like, because it's raining, it's not very windy, so the flag doesn't blow very much, but there's a red swastika, and I don't know if it was one of those like good swastikas, the ones that are going the opposite direction, or
so I mean, the way it was, like I don't know if it's what we think it's supposed to be, but so I don't want to draw too many conclusions. I don't think it's because it is, it can be like
it's a common symbol in East Asia,
Buddhism and other stuff. So I don't know. But it would be kind of weird to have that up there with the cross. I don't know. Anyway, either symbol with the cross, I guess, is a.
And can we talk about this shot also? This first shot for the scene, with the scene of this young man getting beat up, it's like a spinning, going up and down. It's technically a oneer, right? But there are a couple of maybe places where they could switch. But pretty impressed. I had to go back and watch it three times, I guess.
I did as well, and that is one comment I will make, at least about this first episode. And I don't know, I mean, there's 12 episodes, so we can see what happens, but I felt like the whoever is doing the artistic direction and the filmography in this is like, whoever the director of photography is in this, it's pretty high quality.
Yeah, I would say top tier for a TV show.
Right. And then the sort of sense, I don't know how you both felt, but just it's got that, especially this rooftop scene. It felt like very dark and like moody, very contrasty. It had honestly a bit of a Blade Runner feel to it.
It's pretty noir. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just thought it was very cool the way it looked, despite the horrific content of this first scene. And it is, I would imagine if you are listening to our podcast, you're okay with these kinds of things. But I would say at the outset, this was a pretty difficult thing to watch, and I'm sure it will only get worse. I was actually more bothered by this than later on in the series.
Really? I thought the later stuff
was really bad. Yeah.
It's pretty bad, but this is,
I mean, this is more like hands-on, I'm beating you up, to the point of, I don't know where they were trying to get him, just to like lie down, probably to defeat.
Yeah,
he kept getting back up, because also he's a zombie, maybe. Like, this is definitely a big question mark for this show. Is his name Jinsu?
Yeah, this is
what
Jinsu.
Is he, like, he's clearly part zombie?
Well, so that comes to it. There's a bigger question. And so I don't know, like, part of me wonders if they retrofitted some of the ideas of COVID with this, because there are some very specific things they do with the virus, or at least I suspect they are doing. Because they're like, later on the show, as we see different people infected with it, there's clearly different timelines and different ways people are being infected, right?
Mm.
Because you see some people that are turning really quickly and other people that are bitten and just kind of hanging out.
Well,
Or
I don't know
hanging out for a
if
little while.
if you're
Like,
talking about Anjo, I don't know that she was actually bitten.
I'm not talking about, well, I don't know if she's actually bitten, but the nurse was bitten pretty solidly.
Mhm.
It takes a while.
Correct.
So
That's
I
correct.
had some real questions about the conversion, the zombification timeline, because it's not upon death, because a lot of these folks weren't injured enough to die, and it's not, in some cases it's like pretty much instantaneous. Maybe it has to do with like concentration of whatever parasite or virus is causing this, but for the guy on the rooftop, it really seemed to be kind of unlocked by
the
the stress
violence.
of the situation.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we're probably going to find out more about it, but there's definitely some questions I have. And I think that is an interesting idea that it's maybe the virus is interacting with different people in different ways. And depending on, various factors, maybe you are affected by it differently,
Yeah.
which is a very COVID thing, but I don't know if that was just them being really really
Well,
uh,
Kingdom also dabbles in this, right? Because the original reanimation plant, if you just ingested it and then you turned into a zombie after you died, if your bite would not raise other zombies, you were just a killing machine.
right.
But when they put the flesh of an infected person into the soup and then ate it,
And yeah.
apparently that lent a cannibalism element to, and I know that these shows are not related, but I'm just trying to draw a connection and maybe the Korean zombie mythos here, that once they ate the cannibal, they basically ate people meat, and then they all turned and were cannibalistic monsters.
I think there's kind of two possibilities here. One is that they're going to dive into this really deeply in the upcoming shows, and we'll kind of understand what the true mechanism here and that is here. And then the other possibility is that the difference in this episode was just for the purposes of tension building. And I think this show is very tongue-in-cheek. It references other zombie forms of media, so it's not like one of those shows where like we talked about this with Midnight Mass. It's like the guy's obviously a vampire, and yet nobody says, "Whoa, a vampire!" So they must be in like a world where there's no vampires. This is definitely a world where there is zombie media, and people kind of like quote unquote understand or get how zombies work. And so I think that kind of reflects in its approach to the audience as well, where they know that this entire episode we're just on the edge of our seats waiting for a mass zombie event, and they keep it to the very last moment. So there's all these places where like that, it could almost happen, that it doesn't quite, and it could almost happen, and then finally it happens. And so maybe it's just for plot convenience sake that some people take a day, like the girl who got chained up to the radiator, and other people it's like instantaneous. We'll just have to wait and see.
Well, I think we're going to find out. I mean, there's clearly a lot of data that they tease us with. So it's just a matter of time, I think, before they go into some kind of an explanation. But I did like how even from the get-go, we get to see at least the seed of what the beginning of this is with Jinsu, and it, just in how we see that he turns the group that is bullying him isn't totally aware of what has happened, clearly, because they just see him fighting back. But I thought the effects, I will say, when he sort of stands up and does the weird back cracking thing, I thought the choreography was really cool here. And it's creepy and weird. And so that more weirdness is going to come. But I did like how they lined this up. And the other thing I thought was impressive, but also just a good way of storytelling, is just, he gets thrown off the roof. This group is nonplussed. Like, they're kind of sociopaths, right? And then you have this girl, the girl bully, Yeonju, basically saying, "Oh, you got me wet," like not paying any attention to the fact that they're beating the crap out of this kid. And on the way down into the alley, like a drop that no one would have survived, nobody.
No.
He hits a sign,
Yeah.
like, and shatters it. And so,
What'd you think of the CGI in that? I thought it was a really smooth transition. It's like
yeah,
it's the first cut from the one shot
yep.
is him going off the side and hitting the sign. And I know that you guys have been a little more critical of the CGI in shows like this, because we did talk about the Ocean of the North,
Yeah.
that deer. Did you feel that it was up to par, up to your standards?
I loved it.
I thought this was fine. I think this was totally fine.
This
I
shot and the
thought-
one of the nurse running out of her office, I thought were
yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
Like getting a practical effect and turning it into CGI and then back into practical, I thought was kind of interesting. Maybe more with the nurse than with this shot.
I was a little bit cool toward the oneer. I thought it was a little over the top, and I couldn't quite figure out why it was so. I don't know. It felt a little self-conscious to me, but the ragdoll physics of this guy falling off the roof, I thought that was awesome. I thought it was like a really clean effect, and same with the nurse.
Yeah. Oh, the nurse was so good. So, and then, it just kind of keeps building this. Like, I also thought that, and then just like playing right into the hospital scene, and you get to, the way they played this was awesome, because you hear the doctor talking about all the injuries that he has, and his dad's kind of like, oh, this is not good, like, because he can overhear him and kind of sneaks into the area where his son is. And then you just get a little bit more and more, and it's brutal and awful, but the way that they sort of roll out this story, I thought was really effective.
It's very mysterious, and I think there's a lot more for Mr. Lee to do on this show, and I like his character so far. He's clearly not a villain. At least I don't think he's a villain. Maybe he will turn out to be a villain after I say that, but I really want to know more about what his game is. And he's the science teacher and Jinsu's dad.
I will say, so Mr. Lee goes to the hospital where he, is convinced to dispatch of Jinsu with a Bible, which is, there's your symbolism again from the rooftop.
Did you think an exorcism scene was coming when he held up the Bible?
I was kind of like, whoa, what is this? Are they doing something very different with this? Like, is
then he just beats the heck out of him with the Bible. And I thought it was interesting that for that we pull back behind the curtain, and this show obviously isn't afraid to get gory, but it also isn't always gory. Like, I feel like if that was The Walking Dead, we would have seen the like head crunch in like
right.
Excruciating close up. But what I thought was incredibly disturbing was when he's taken the suitcase with his son's body.
I have in my notes. Yes, that
was a nightmare. Like, just the arms shooting out from the side, and then like the suitcase kind of like thumping around on the ground as Jinsu's reanimated body is trying to escape. That was extremely disturbing to me,
but also effective. And even when he's walking with the suitcase, and you can feel like the suitcase is moving around, I thought they were going to do a horrible like face out of the suitcase thing, but they didn't really do that.
I'm not sure we've seen the last of Jinsu. I think he they don't actually show his his body being whatever, dismembered or something. I'm worried Mr. Lee's got him somewhere.
There's clearly a fair amount of time between that suitcase scene and the next scene after the title credits. So yeah, there's plenty to fill in there. Clearly that the cop who shows up later in this episode knows Mr. Lee, and it could be from the Jinsu chapter. We'll find. I mean, I'm like I said, I think Mr. Lee is a very fascinating character so far, and I definitely want to find out what he's been up to.
Right. And even in these hospital scenes, and as he's walking through the garage, he just seems incredibly worn out and tired and overwhelmed. And like, he plays it really well. Like, he just looks totally devastated all the time. So the makeup is really good. He always has like a weird sheen of sweat happening.
Well, and he apparently smells like rotting flesh.
Apparently he smells like a rotting corpse, and he looks kind of gray. So I have a few ideas about that. But yeah, like he's not doing well, but he plays this off really effectively. I also want to the title credits are pretty cool.
Yeah, it's short but very interesting.
Yeah.
Which is what it starts off like, oh, it looks like some cells kind of swirling around, but then morphs into just a mob of zombies. It's effective. Yeah.
But anyway, like that's sort of all, the rooftop bully and the hospital room and all that is pre-titles, and then they hop right into sort of like setting the scene, which is
that's also like 7.5 minutes is the rooftop bullying and the hospital room scene.
Lot.
It's a lot, but it's also like they fit a lot into those 7 minutes too.
They do.
And then I'm loving this show for the glimpses into Korean high school life. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never spent any time there. So yeah, like even the chimes that they play for things, I love. The fact that they have a school cleaning day apparently, I think is really, really cool. And so I really enjoyed these scenes. And again, the camera work in these scenes is like going through the floor. Between floors and in a way that's quite seamless, and I enjoy the music during this scene too.
Oh, me too. And it's the minutia of the cleaning that I kind of like, and just seeing just the day-to-day life. And I thought this was just a great way to show like the school, to show sort of the general like the setting for all the characters. And I also think that the color quality is really amazing in this show so far.
The way they're shooting, or what do you mean, like, be more specific? Is it the uniform colors, or what are you liking?
The colorization in general of the film quality. It's clearly they had a pretty big budget for this, and the lighting is really, really good.
American TV shows and movies have taken an approach to color grading that I really hate.
Really?
American media these days tends to be very like yellow and desaturated. So you get these images that are just like, it looks like all the color's been totally scraped out of them, and people's skin tones look very kind of either pallid or sickly. It's across all media, not just horror media. It happens a lot in action movies too. And so I love seeing something like this that's so kind of bright and slick and saturated. Everything just kind of pops. It looks really good.
I also think that happens with American media because of how people are watching it, because what you're watching on like a lot of televisions and like big screen TVs now, like especially like the like LCD and all that stuff, you have to really adjust the color and in a way to make it not look like that. But that's part of the issue. What you're looking, if you watch something on your laptop versus on like a television, it's going to look very different. Case in point, when I visited my mom over the holidays, we had to adjust her whole thing because it looked so bad. So I think that's part of the issue, is the monitor versus the actual media itself.
Yeah. So it's kind of like getting to know you series of scenes, following students mopping and teachers and everybody's being nice. And there's an archery scene, which I feel like is going to be important later.
Yeah, that I have archery feels like foreshadowing is what I have written.
But then we go into the science lab where, and I had not made the connection that this was the same young woman, but she's wakes up from a nap and these other people are leaving her alone. And then she makes a classic horror mistake, which is investigating the noise.
Yeah, she made a couple of mistakes here, and mistakes that I almost wish they had played a little differently. But also it just shows sort of the non-loyalty people have to each other. Like, she told her friends to wake her up. They're all like, should we wake her up?
That's a total theme. That's a mega theme for this show.
Right. Like,
it's
people don't really...
People like there are very few Samaritans and very few people willing to lend a hand. And I feel, definitely feel you on that.
Right. But she goes to explore the noise, and I have to say, the squirrel that's trying to break into my apartment right now, I have no desire to get near it. And he's not busting out of a big metal cage thing. Do you think that someone would actually put their hand anywhere near this weird little hamster? I don't.
After it's been moving the entire metal box.
Right. Like, and I certainly don't think people would be looking at it and saying, oh, it's cute, which is kind of what she does. And I think it would have been better if she had taken the thing off and it like while she was doing it, it had actually like accidentally bitten her. She didn't get her hand out of the way in time, instead of her trying to kind of like was she trying to pet the hamster? I don't know, but I just don't buy that any normal person would be trying to pet this thing, and it definitely wasn't cute.
Talking about a high school student though, like they're, I think we're going to see this over and over again. They have very, very poor decision-making skills. I was younger than high school, but I have a vivid memory of being about 10 or 11 years old and working in our school's like community garden. I don't know, digging to plant some peas or something. And there was a gopher in there, and everybody was like, gopher, gopher. And I was like, I'll just pick this gopher up and move it to a different, like, patch of dirt. And I picked it up and it immediately bit me. And I remember just feeling so betrayed. Like that's when Kyle learned about the true, ferocity of nature or something.
Kyle, are you carrying a zombie virus? Is this what you're telling us?
Ever since 1997? No.
It's a long burn, a really long burn.
Kyle, that is hilarious.
It was like so fast too. I picked it up and it was just immediately like, what the fuck? I'm being carried by a giant and bit me on the finger.
Okay,
so I felt some kinship.
I'm gonna be kind to you, Kyle, because gophers are cute. And you were 10.
This mouse was not cute. Yeah, and I was 10. But I don't know. I extend some. I have a greater suspension of disbelief for the decision made by young protagonists in movies, because young people often don't have those critical thinking skills yet.
Okay, so this is my problem with
everything.
I feel like a lot of, well, no, but in general for like the YA genre, I feel like people try to play it both ways. So depending on the scene, they're like, oh, they have great judgment or judgment beyond their years or whatever, or they have no judgment. In this case, I don't believe it. And I do think that a high school student would be smart enough not to like put her hand into pet a rabid, creepy looking hamster. I mean, this thing looks diseased. It's like creepy looking. So anyway,
an example of that kind of duality in writing, I think, is good in Alicia's character in Fear the Walking Dead, where in season 2 she is easily taken in by con men, and then in season 3 she can calculate the amount of oxygen in a room and the number of people that are in it and how long they have to breathe. And she's a high school dropout, and so she is because of the zombie apocalypse, not because she wasn't a great student. But yeah, so I would agree that they're people this age are frequently written to make bad choices, but then you can also have them be geniuses, and it is difficult to square that circle.
Yeah, but anyway, that aside, there we have it. Patient beta, or possibly beta. I will say that this is like an incredibly creepy scene, because the biology teacher, Mr. Lee, sees her, realizes she got bitten by this thing, and immediately goes out. And again, they do a really good job at like hiding certain things. They're not going to show you the full picture, but the noises are more than enough and creepy enough. And he like drags her back into the room, and ties her to a radiator. Which
was hilarious. Like, this is a way funnier show than I expected, and the way that he just kind of like yoinks her back into the
class. It's very cartoonish.
It's definitely a yoink, but I don't know that I found this funny when you're like, oh yeah, that the teacher just assaulted the student. I mean, granted, she's a zombie now, but I don't think I was feeling the comedy of it, other than the yoink was pretty great timing on Mr. Lee's part.
I would say it's dark comedy, but I would agree it's a bit of comedy, because it's just very like, oh, you're getting at it. It's just like a little tropey thing that I kind of enjoyed. It felt a little Scooby-Doo-ish. Like,
yeah, okay. In the next scene, it's an exterior, it's brighter, and we start to meet some of our core cast. In this scene, we meet Cheong-san and his buddy, who's I don't know his name, but he's kind of he might be a comic relief character. He definitely is, because of the way he talks with his mouth full later.
Yeah.
But apparently he doesn't smell great.
Yeah.
We'll find out. So they're all talking about Cheong-san, his mom's restaurant, and how they've moved and are going to do a reopening, but they've kept the name Cheong-san, and he really doesn't like that because that's his name. He's like, Mom, why can't you change the name of the restaurant? God, you suck. And we also meet Anjo, and what do you guys think of the Anjo Cheong-san relationship? Do you ship them? Do you like them? Are they too familiar? Can they never be star-crossed lovers?
I mean, I think it's like a very tropey thing, right? And I, it didn't shock me that this is what they were trying to do. They're neighbors that have lived together. This is all normal. I mean, we've seen it in many films, the Anna and the Apocalypse and all that kind of thing. And what's interesting is that they, at least on his end, he tries to play it off and act like she's annoying all the time, but he gives her like some sorry about that.
Slow motion hair wavy staring scenes.
Yeah, like so they are trying to ship them, and from his point of view you can see that he likes her, though he doesn't say that to other people.
Yeah, he kind of sucks in that regard.
Yeah, he's really bad. And she is very insistent that she likes somebody else, and who can blame her, because Bear Sue's pretty cute and seems like a stand-up guy.
So he's the ducky in this scenario?
I would say I would say definitely Cheong-san is the ducky here. Don't you think?
I like their dynamic. It feels very believable to me, including the fact that he's pretty much a doofus about everything.
He is a doofus. And I the first time I watched this episode, I was like, I like the way that they can punch each other, or she can kick him and they're still friends afterwards. But I also think, they're just really they're broken as a like, they don't communicate. She's not very good at communicating with anyone. She frequently, or at least a couple times in this episode, says something like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" And the person she's talking to is like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Nothing."
I know, but her friend that she has these interactions with, you can see why, because once her friend finds out, her friend like pretty much broadcasts it to everybody. So but it is very teenagey in terms of that kind of stuff. And like any good YA show, we've got, Cheong-san liking Anjo liking Bear Sue liking Namra. And so, but nobody at this point likes each other. Only that the little the very sweet bullied students that we see in the second bullying scene. They do like each other, but
does she like him enough? Because that's I
don't know that she likes him enough, but she definitely likes him, because she pretty much says that, like, two nerds liking each other, how pathetic is that? So
and here we're getting into like the really kind of like fucked up stuff that's happening at this high school, like,
right.
I think one of the reasons why I wasn't too disturbed by the opening scene was the lack of context. Like, I didn't really know who any of these characters were, or why they were beaten up on this dude, or anything. But we're coming up on the scene where they're essentially like blackmailing this girl with revenge porn, and the dynamics of this are extremely uncomfortable. Supposed to be uncomfortable, but extremely uncomfortable. And that scene I found really more difficult to watch than just about anything else in this episode.
I agree. I also think that they do a good job at basically showing the lives of the students, and the students all know what's going on, and there's sort of this underlying, like, there's all sorts of different little stories happening. Some are positive and innocuous and just sort of the normal high school stuff, and some of them are really disturbing and psychologically damaging things that these kids are doing to each other, and the adults have no idea of what's happening. And so it's all basically happening under the adults' noses. They're not providing any sort of help or assistance, and the students are kind of on their own in this little microcosm of a high school, except I would say the one sort of not that they know what's going on, but Andro's dad, like, they have the little breakfast scene, and he's basically, I mean, this is a little negative, he's like, "You're gonna suck on your test."
Oh God, I love that conversation. I love it so much.
That's okay. That just eat healthily and be happy. You don't need to worry about test scores, which
your grades don't matter when you get into a car accident.
Right. At least he's not like pressuring her on that point, but a little encouragement might be okay too.
Yeah, they have a pretty messed up relationship too. I enjoyed these the breakfast scenes here. And then the breakfast scene leads into them going to school. And I thought that this was fascinating too. The fact that all these kids are leaving for school like 20 minutes too late.
Yep.
Why does everybody have to sprint to get to school? I used to walk a mile to school every day for high school, and I don't remember ever being late.
Was it
And
uphill in a storm?
no, it was very flat. It's Chicago.
Okay.
But yeah, sometimes in a storm. And although when it was really bad, I would get a ride. But yeah, dude, you just leave on time and you can walk as slow as you want, like.
Well, and also if they're monitoring people this closely, like the teachers actually have timers and sticks or something. Like, I don't know. It seems pretty extreme to me, but
yeah, I would have struggled here. I was like the kid who was always getting like a note sent home being like, your child has exceeded the max number of, tardy arrivals they can have in one semester or something like that. So I would have been getting wrapped on the knuckles a lot.
I just thought that those scenes were funny, but also another like interesting glimpse into what might be a normal thing going on in Korean high school life. Is this like desire to jaywalk into traffic to get to school on time?
Right.
Kind of crazy, but that does go from those kind of like getting to school on time scenes. We go into the second bullying scene, which I agree with Kyle. It was very, very disturbing. And then Bear Sue is introduced here too, and tries to intercede, and like he is the only one in this show so far being a good Samaritan. Like he's definitely a hero character because he does it again later for Namra. He saves her life actually, but he tries to save these two kids who are getting bullied, the boy and the girl. And because the video has already been taken, Mullet, who's so evil, just has to say like, I'll share this with your mom. We're friends on Facebook, which is hardcore. And they're like, they voluntarily go back into the bullying chamber of this construction site, and Bear Sue has to walk away like, well, I guess that didn't work out. And it's kind of incongruous to go from that to him getting hit on by Anjo, which I thought was kind of an interesting juxtaposition for the show too.
Right. And I also think, though, I mean, we learned some key information here. One is that Bear Sue used to be actually part of this.
True.
And they comment on that, and it's like, oh, you used to like to have fun like this with us. So that's something might have happened. I don't know with it, like where he stopped doing that. So I think we'll probably find out a little bit more about that later. But the other part is how powerless the kids that are bullying feel and how much power the bullying group has in the school. And we do see more of this later. Like this girl in the scene is later on completely bawling her eyes out in class as Mullet guy is writing like slurs on the back of her shirt. And granted, it is Mr. Lee, so he's got other things going on, but he does not stop Nam. He doesn't even notice it. He doesn't notice that this kid is like basically right behind her and she's bawling her eyes out. And so you kind of understand later like why these kids are not willing to pull themselves out of this, because basically she says this is only going to get worse later, we might as well just deal with it now, which is a pretty horrible feeling for somebody to have.
I get the impression Mr. Lee is trying to help in his way with his really scary story about viruses, but it doesn't have the effect that he's hoping it will have. And
if that is his way, it's kind of passive and not a direct intervention.
And I would say an exception to this, kind of like nobody cares, everybody's just kind of doing their own thing and letting the kids do their Lord of the Flies. The exception to that is Mrs. Park, who is the English teacher. I assume she's the English teacher because she's teaching in English. And she seems to legitimately care about her students. She does say some weird stuff to Anjo about last year's phone. I did not understand the relevance of that.
I think it meant that she had her new phone, so she was keeping her phone on her and just handing in a dummy phone.
Oh, yeah, and that the teacher was so familiar with the class that she even recognized like, what model of phone they had at this moment in time. She's also the only one who notices that the girl's gone missing. The bully girl or the zombie girl. Yeah. And she's concerned, and she goes and talks to Mr. Lee and questions him like a couple of times to the point where he's like, yeah, I already told you, I didn't see her. So yeah, Mrs. Park is the cool teacher. She gives a darn, and she's going to be a hero.
Right.
She's going to whip these kids into shape as a post-apocalyptic community.
Yeah.
That's my prediction.
I will also say in the bullying scene, we find out, because part of why they're bullying the the guy, is that he talked to teachers and told them what had happened. And so that, like, there's been no, for the most part, like, he's still in their crosshairs, and more so because he actually told. So again, teachers, adults are powerless to help the students that are being bullied, or at least that's kind of what they're implying here. So yeah, so I also say, like, Mrs. Park's class also is a good little, scene to see. We see a lot of the students, talking to each other. They're sort of like, again, the sort of normal stuff that happens in a high school class, with the dark story about this student that's gone missing, and how nobody knows where she is. And probably the ones who were told to wake her up were like, oh yeah, last time I saw her, she was in the science lab. And I don't know, her interaction with Mr. Lee, he's being pretty disturbing here. So, but there is a thing with the teachers in the school that they're not supposed to get outside help. It's all supposed to be dealt with internally, because they don't want to, like, ruin their rating. So that's also an interesting,
that's an insane scene that comes later in
Yeah.
the principal's office. On a couple levels. Number one, I love his decor. I love those chairs. I want to sit in one of those chairs.
Right.
But they're so close together. Like, when do they actually have conferences at these chairs where they're like sitting facing each other from 1 foot away? But also, like, this is definitely a familiar Korean zombie film trope of the people in charge are just more concerned about their bottom line or their prestige. And so
it's like the mayor in Jaws.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, totally. They all should be wearing little anchor coats.
Yeah. Open the beaches. So the fact that he would say to one of his teachers who called an ambulance for a student who was bleeding and, like, clearly had been in a traumatic accident or an incident, and is like, you should never have called the ambulance. That's crazy. He has a point though, because their nurse's office is pretty well kitted out. They should have hospital beds.
Yeah, but it's still, aside from the physical injuries, they at this point don't know. A teacher has kept a student locked up. She looks like she's been beaten and who knows what else. So, and they're giving Mrs. Park a hard time for calling the police.
When she's threading the line. She's saying to her students, like, we have to corroborate this. Don't talk to anybody.
Right.
So she's at least, like, I think she does the right thing, which is like, look, a student was missing and has turned up bloody. She's saying this. She doesn't even say that to the cops that we know of. Maybe they did because they show up with their handcuffs out. But it feels like she is at least approaching this in a rational way, which is, again, why Mrs. Park is probably going to be a primary hero character.
Or zombie meat. No.
Yeah.
But in the midst of all this weird stuff, because we get to see this. It's a really disturbing scene when they bring her into the nurse's office, and she's like, her temperature's low. We get some of the key elements of this infection, and she bites people. And then they take her off to the hospital, and we know how that's going to go. But then they go back to school, and Anjo, after this very traumatic scene, is like, you know what, this is a good time to let Bearsu know how I feel. And
this is important for, they don't know.
No, I'm just saying, it's just like, really, no, it makes sense. Like, it's definitely a teenage thing. She's like, all right, she's in the ambulance, she's off doing okay, I'm gonna tell Bearsu, I'm gonna give him my name tag, which I guess means that they want to go out. And he is really concerned that she's, with Cheong-san, and asks him directly if they're together.
Well, he runs right up during this moment too. So Bearsu isn't really given an opportunity to respond.
True. But then we see later, I think we know pretty much who he's interested in based on his interactions later. But
yeah.
Before we move past it, when they're taking the zombie girl to the nurse's office, they carry her in the most insane way to carry an injured person that I've ever seen in my life.
Piggyback is a rescue carry,
piggyback, right? No, it's like, Bearsu, what are you doing? Do a fireman's carry, do anything
yeah,
else.
no, I know, it was weird.
Right? And then secondly, and I guess we'll get there, but like, you said that she's biting people. Did she bite people or just person? Because if Nam got bit, it's taken a really long time to develop into anything, right? Like, so the nurse definitely gets like really her forearm like munched on, and that's why she is about to convert here pretty soon. But Nam's got her arm wrapped up for like a good 35 minutes of this episode
She
with no
describes it.
apparent signs.
She describes it as a scratch, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the scene, it looks like there might have been teeth on flesh contact. And Bear Sue also describes it as she just got hurt trying to get away or trying to help
Yeah.
the girl.
So
So I feel like there's a few different stories, and this is completely, purposeful, of course, because also they didn't show the nurse getting bitten earlier. That it's a flashback.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that they're kind of setting us up to be like, oh, you were secretly bitten, and now we're going to reveal this, and now you're in a room with a zombie.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's going to
And
be.
I think Nam's thing might be like a red herring. Like I think it
Yeah.
seems like if she were going to convert, she'd have done it by now.
And what is another red herring is this sweaty pregnant girl or whatever's going on with this girl with the bowel stuff. Like,
Yeah.
there's
What's
multiple scenes
happening?
with this girl. She's trying to talk to the nurse when they come in with the zombie girl, and then she leaves the school campus, walking very slowly, holding her abdomen, and so big question mark on this character too.
This is kind of what I was talking about at the beginning with like they're really like toying with your expectations here, because like the initial like I guess patient beta sense like alpha was
Jinsu.
the guy Jinsu in the beginning, but she gets carted off and taken away to the hospital, and so then life at the school goes back to normal for like a good couple of hours with the kids kind of going back into their own little worlds for a while before we get the true outbreak. And so during this time is when I really had the most like, where's this going to come from? Like from what like avenue are they is something going to happen here? And of course
I'll
it ends up
admit,
in the nurse.
I admit I thought something was going to happen with Anjo. I thought it was going to be her because of how much they were playing up the bandage. I do think something happened to her. I think she is infected because of something that happens at the end of this episode.
Oh, okay.
But I also was like, okay, so what's going to happen in the school? I thought something was going to happen, and we do see Mr. Lee sort of like the police come for him. He like all characters in this kind of a series is like, no, wait, you don't understand. She needs to be quarantined, without giving any kind of helpful information that might actually be, useful to people.
There was a
Don't take her
scene
to,
also.
don't take her to the hospital. She needs to be chained to a radiator in the back
Right,
room.
right.
Not even
exactly.
chained, zip tied, and he knows how
Zip-tied.
strong these things are.
I mean, even duct tape is not doing its job here.
There was a scene of him talking into a like a recorder, like he was leaving video vlog basically about his research, and I think that will come in handy later too. Certainly, if he doesn't make it into very far into the season, that maybe they can use some of his notes to parse like what they're dealing with.
Yeah. But anyway, so but then the mystery is solved because obviously the nurse got bitten, and we saw that. I thought that the conversion scene was pretty amazing, and then how the students discover her is pretty. I thought everything about this was pitch perfect. It was so good.
Yeah, this was a kind of the sort of scene you would expect to see maybe a little sooner, but they've been working on a lot of character development. And again, I think this CGI here where she runs at spiky hair and tracksuit and then bounces off that wall and then suddenly is an actor again. I thought that was a pretty incredible bit of CGI, but it was clearly CGI. So I don't know where you guys fall on that.
It was, but I was okay with it here. It was pretty fast moving. And I did think that the choreography here in the hallway was done really well. And then as they follow the action throughout the rest of the school, I thought this was artful and kind of amazing.
The effects on Tracksuit's face after he's bitten and turns, which takes seconds. Like as you were saying earlier, nurse gets bit on the wrist and turns maybe 30 minutes later. It's hard to tell exactly how long it's been since the girl got taken away in the ambulance. Tracksuit turns in seconds.
And maybe it's like, proximity to the brain and like amount of the stuff transferred, like depth of the bite kind of thing, because took a long time for the mouse bite to develop. or hamster bite rather. Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna get more specificity on that later.
Right.
But what did you think of the effects, Kyle? Were you bothered by it, or were you okay with it?
No, especially the nurse coming out was pretty brutal. I like that a lot. And it, it can draw you in by just being kind of, mysterious and well composed, even if the actual you overlook the CGI in that instance. And so I thought that the kind of shot where they find her and start taping her, where she's just kind of standing like barefooted the other way with kind of this weird, ethereal like stance, was very spooky. So I wasn't taken out of it here at any point. And of course, all of this culminates in kind of the coup de grace shot of the entire, maybe the entire show, which is the just all the windows exploding as zombies and kids push out everywhere.
I thought that reveal and the scene before that I thought it was really well done. The two bullied students, the bullied girl is basically going to commit suicide and the bullied boy is trying to get her to stop. And then, it seems like it's not going too well and like she's still going to make that decision, but instead you see all the zombies pitching out the windows, and that, like, just that shot from the rooftop was really good. And then following that action, and I thought that was I wonder how many times they needed to take that shot and to do that stunt. It's just because it's pretty action, and all of this, I mean, pretty action heavy, very quick moving, and then just mayhem kind of like spreading throughout the school. But weirdly, in the lunchroom, it gets there kind of last. It's we still have Anjo basically worried about whether Bear-su likes her or not, and trying to get Cheong-san to help her with it, and he's clearly devastated. But
I think this is part of the statement that the show is already starting to make, which is all this like petty drama of high school life is going to very quickly become obsolete and meaningless. And I mean, it's probably most blatantly painted with the bullied kids going through their life or death struggle on the roof. But also you've got the last thing that Cheong-san and Anjo say to each other, he's kind of blowing her off and she's saying, "You're not my friend." And you're like, "Oh man, this feels like a big moment for those characters if the zombie apocalypse wasn't about to arrive." But then it does. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how they continue to do these relationships, if they're going to mature everything very quickly, or if they're going to still be kind of petty and love quadrangly about it. And
I'm not so sure. I think that part of the theme of this show is likely to be that even in the zombie apocalypse, these petty things are still, or these kind of smaller concerns are still very important to high school students. I think they're gonna double down on that, because otherwise I don't think they would have spent so much time establishing all these dynamics in the first episode very carefully between all these characters.
Yeah.
Speaking of smaller concerns, the squirrel is again trying to get into the apartment, so if you can hear that, I'm sorry.
No, I can't.
I'm gonna leave this episode to then go turn into a zombie, apparently. But no, I think you're right, Kyle. I think they're definitely going to have those contrasts, I think, throughout this whole series, where it's going to be, the sort of weird, sort of navel gazing type themes versus life and death situations. And I also think that that's going to probably set apart certain characters, right? I mean, we do see that Cheong-san does care for Anjo. We do see that Bear-su is interested in Namra, and then he indeed saves her. And he, at this point, is one of the only teenage characters we've seen that has actually helped other kids in the school. And so I think that is probably going to be one of the main themes of this whole deal.
For sure. Yeah, because Anjo says to Cheong-san, like, "Why can you not help me even once?" I mean, she's asking for help getting him to give up his love for her, which he's not going to be able to do. But still, the point stands. And so AJ, you hinted at this a moment ago, but when the zombies break into the lunchroom, Anjo is kind of frozen in terror, and a zombie gets right up on her and roars in her face. And then we cut to black and credits. So you're thinking, because of that slight hesitation that we haven't seen, you think that she's infected.
Yeah, because I feel like they made a point of showing how immediate it was with everybody else. She's sitting there as like a sitting duck, and that zombie is not immediately attacking her. And hey, maybe I feel like she's a main character, and so we're not going to see her bite it yet, but maybe I'm wrong, so to speak. But it seems like there was enough of a pause, and almost like the zombie was smelling her or something. And so, and we know about the corpse smell on the teacher, and about, you know, the patient, the beta patient, or whoever, the girl that was locked to the radiator. So I feel like there's something there that maybe she's infected and it knows, and therefore the virus, it doesn't want to spread it because it's already been spread to her. But I think we'll probably find out more, hopefully, in the next episode.
I'm very excited to learn more about the layout of this school and tactically how they can make parts of it safe, because it feels like this thing is everywhere. Maybe there's a floor, like an admin floor, where it hasn't gotten yet. I was really hopeful that this pedestrian bridge was going to be like a great choke point. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how honestly, also the set, how gorgeous. Like it's big. It's by this giant river. The exterior shots, I think, are really nice. I think the set, if it's one place, it might be multiple places and like, you know, a studio, but or a set in interior. But I'm looking forward to seeing more of the school, and you know, next steps of like barricading stuff off and how they're going to make it work.
Well, and I mean, pretty much every room that we've seen has an enormous number of windows or glass, and that includes the lunchroom. The only place we've really seen that doesn't is the teacher's lounge, which is also why they are helpfully ignorant, or not so ignorant as we find out about what's happening. I mean, we have Mrs. Park arguing with the principal about, you know, he's all upset because kids are calling and saying zombies. And he's like, let's just keep it quiet. And they don't seem to be fully aware of the melee that's happening outside, or some of them do. It's just a really weird scene. But helpfully they can't really see outside of this lounge. Like, it's pretty blocked off.
Have you seen the next episode, AJ?
No, not yet.
Okay. I thought that scene happened before the outbreak. Oh, maybe. Yeah.
No, because he's like, the principal is like, have I seen the next episode? I don't think so.
Because this principal's office scene happens before spiky hair and tracksuit find the nurse.
Oh.
Yeah, and they were talking about calling the police, and then at the end,
that's about Mr. Lee. Yeah, but but regardless, they are ignorant of things going on in the school. So and they're very concerned about keeping an interior policy, basically, an insular policy. Like, let's handle this insane thing on our own.
We have a couple of cops though on campus, so that'll play in too.
I love the just sense of chaos, you know. The situation turns from, you know, non-existent or manageable to just total chaos extremely quickly, and the way that was filmed was very satisfying, I thought, to close out this episode.
And we don't really, I mean, did you see any adults in the lunchroom?
I don't think so.
No.
They're doing this whole thing, so that's another kind of weird piece.
Those are really tightly framed shots though. Like, it's usually just of kids' faces. I feel like maybe there are some with kids in the background, but
even like, wouldn't there normally be some kind of adult supervision?
This school is very Lord of the Flies, as we've already established. It seems like the gym teacher and the guy with the phone and the stick are the two, you know, deans of students, maybe, who tell people when they're late and get demerits. And they might be upstairs with the principal dealing with Mr. Lee.
Right.
But yeah, so anyway, what are your impressions? Are you excited for the rest of the show? Does it feel like it's going to be too much to handle? Kyle?
I'm excited. I think I'm worried that like AJ said, with 12 episodes, it'll kind of start to get a little repetitive, but we'll see where it goes. I really it could broaden out in directions that we're not expecting, and so far I'm enjoying it, and it's not too serious, which is kind of nice. You know, it's more just kind of like entertainment at this point in time, which will be fun.
Yeah, so far I'm enjoying it. I think the only thing I'm hoping that if it all takes place here, I think we might run out of some stuff, but maybe that we'll get to see something at different parts of the city, because we do have, the patient that was taken to the hospital, so that's obviously gonna sort of spread it far and wide. So I think that if they do it right, it might continue this momentum, but that remains to be seen. So far, I like it. I think if they evolve these characters, it's not as creepy. But yeah, I mean, I think you totally hit the nail on the head with the Lord of the Flies reference, because that's kind of what it already feels like to me. And so I think they're gonna have to knock out the adults, or the adults are going to continue to be truly unhelpful. So
it's funny because I'm also simultaneously watching Yellow Jackets, which is also essentially a Lord of the Flies retelling. So it just this is Lord of the Flies' moment right now for some reason.
Right.
In year 2 of the pandemic, we're just obsessed with knowing how a bunch of young people would do if they were locked in a room together.
Well, Kyle, there is no before when you join the undersea. That's my second Station 11 reference for anybody who's keeping track. Okay. Well,
have you read the book yet, Stuart, or are you just watching the show?
I finished the show. I don't think I'm gonna pick up the book right now.
Okay.
It's a good book. I read it a really long time ago, but I remember enjoying it.
But in any case, well, I look forward to talking about the next episode, seeing who survives, who doesn't, and just kind of seeing where this little apocalypse goes. I mean, I'm definitely waiting for the big reveal with Mr. Lee. And I don't know, the one thing about those cops when they came to pick him up from the teacher's lounge, like I don't know, like if there's more of them out there, if they kind of like, I would expect that they would want to go and interview some of the students about what had happened.
Good luck with that.
But now that may be a moot point. So you'll see. But and I also want to say that I think we're gonna probably see more, or I don't know, maybe it'll be bad because Anjo's dad went in the ambulance with the main patient.
Yeah, that doesn't probably bode well.
So that does not bode well for him. So I feel like he's gonna make a reappearance at some point, as zombie or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see about that. But overall, I'm okay. I'm enjoying this. Like I think that the way this is done, seriously, I mean, South Korea is doing an incredible job with content, and they're really challenging, I think, everybody else, because this is a pretty good production.
Well, it's the willingness to invest this much into a project like this. You couldn't, I mean, other than Zack Snyder, who then went on to make a prequel about safe jacking, cracking, which made, I just watched Army of Thieves this week and I was like, I don't understand. I do not get it, but it's a fun movie, but I don't get why does it have to be in this universe?
Yeah.
Like nobody else is willing to put that much money into zombies, and South Korea is obviously really into it right now. So I'll take it.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, it feels to me like, a lot of it's based on, manga or anime. So maybe it's not as like quote unquote original as it feels, but it really feels to me like you have to go to South Korea to get a lot of kind of original storytelling. Like everything in American media right now is like adaptations or sequels or remakes. And so I think the success of things like Squid Game and Parasite and this are just that they're, totally original ideas and movies that are being made with reasonable budgets.
Well, Kyle, we were also saying that like the production companies and things that have set up there, they are investing a lot of money, and then also the talent pool in South Korea for effects and all of that. I mean, they are basically like, hey, we have the opportunity here to do these kinds of projects, and the investment is there. And so they really are making, I think, just incredible strides in terms of the types of things that they're putting out and the stories they're putting out. And I do think I agree with you. I think their strength is that they're putting out original content versus remakes and retools of older content. And I kind of wish we would see more original content overall. And I mean, look, I think Apple TV is doing a lot, but there's still obviously, in general, I think that the tendency is, oh well, this like fan base is really a rabid fan base, so we're just going to kind of keep doing the Marvel storylines, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I'm enjoying this new competitor. I think it's going to be, especially for the zombie genre and the horror genre, I think it's going to be really something to see what else comes out of here.
Yeah, I haven't been reading all of the critical response, but I'm seeing a lot of very favorable headlines. And Rotten Tomatoes is currently rating the show 100% critically, which is only based on like 8 reviews, I think. But that's great. And so I think there might be more to come as people have a minute to watch the whole show. It's only been out for a day as we record this,
right?
But we will continue to review this, and I think it'll be great if folks out there who are watching wanted to let us know what they think about it. You can get at us on the Twitter, Reanimated PCast. You can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and our show notes are online at reanimatedpodcast.com. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you have it in you to do a couple more of these, if not the whole 12-hour run.
For sure. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and so do we want to do a couple the next time? Is that the idea?
It might be a lot to process, but maybe we can take a slightly more thematic approach to it. Yeah, I'd be up for it.
I mean, yeah, I think we should do that. And if it does become too much, we can cut it up. But, there's just going to be the running and the screaming next time, right?
That's all it's going to be. Just 70 minutes is the next episode of running and screaming. I can't wait. Okay. Let's do a sign off. Kyle, you get to do one. Okay. Do you want to do the first one?
No.
You want to go last?
Sure.
All right. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll be back with more All of Us Are Dead next time on Reanimated. So ta-ta.
Yep. Until next time. Ciao.
I don't have one. See you next time.